the various grounds taken in the writ petition being filed at Mumbai in the case of Dharmendra Jani is, first is a GST is a destination based consumption tax, and section 13(8) B of the IGST Act and read with section 8(2) are concerned. They are ultra virus to the constitutional validity thereof is challenged. The ground taken is, one is a destination based tax. The second is concerned the article never permits to levy the tax when there is a transaction of export of services. And here, when the customer is outside India, the place of supply has to be the location of the customer, which is a destination based tax. So, which is in contrast to the Article 246A, 269A, and 286 of the Constitution. Third is concerned, it is even ultra biased to the charging section, section 5, as well as the charging section 9 of the CGST Act. Secondly, it is violated to the Article 14 of the Constitution, which is arbitrary, unreasonable, because trying to levy the tax on a transaction which has been consumed outside India. And secondly, violative of right to carry on the business. And there, to great extent, is a double taxation. These were the arguments taken. Now, the two judges bench of Mumbai High Court, they had within them, there were difference of opinion is concerned on this matter. And here the first judge is has given his first view, Mr. Bhushan Ujjal Bhuyan. Ujjal Bhuyan has stated no. He was of the view that yes, section 13(8)B, he was with the petitioner. Section 13(8)B read with section 8(2) has created a deeming fiction, and it by the export of service by an intermediary made to tax locally, and it was an interstate supply, and thereby it is run contrary to the scheme of GST. So he is of the view that it is contrary to the scheme of GST and Article 245 of the Constitution and Supreme Court ruling of GVK Industry, where it was held that extraterritorial effect given through the impugned provision has no real connection or nexus with the taxing regime. So the judge, Mr. Bhuyan, was of the view that yes, it need to be struck down to that extent, which was contrast to the High Court decision of Gujarat is concerned. But on the other end, we have other judge, Mr. Abhay Ahuja, sir, and he said that when we have a space, there are a few couple of very important observations in the decisions. The first is when there is a specific definition and provisions are there in the statute, then the term is been defined and there is a specific provision related to a place of supply. You cannot go to the general provisions of export of services. And he relied on very important thing that the special, there is a phrase, Latin phrase, which is a special area derogant generalized base. That means it says that special provisions are never limited or explained by the general. So exports, he says, is a completely different provision within this thing and which has been defined in the purpose for the purpose of GST, but we have a specific provisions of intermediary as well as the place of supply. So therefore, there is no question of there is a deeming fiction being created, but the law intends to levy the tax by deciding the place of supply. And thereby 13(8)B of the Act person is concerned. It is the powers and it is stipulation of this clause which is contained in 38B, which is in as per the provision of Article 269. It is within the power of Article 269A5 read with 246A, and the constitutional validity is concerned. It is not in ultra virus to the Constitution. So we have this decision. Of course, now this matter will be traveled to the larger bench because it has not been concluded because of the difference of opinion. In this scenario, there will be few challenges is concerned. The first challenge is concerned now having two courts. Well, Gujarat High Court, of course, upheld the constitutional validity. Mumbai High Court, we have contradiction. The second issue, whether the transaction, if taxable, whether it is to be interstate or intrastate, and all those issues will come up. And now with this, I'll request Keval to take you through. He will give some brief about the service tax regime and thereafter the case studies is concerned. Thank you very much, Keval. Over to you.
Thank you, Rajiv Bhai. Thank you so much, not just to Rajiv Bhai, but the Chamber of Tax Consultant for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts on this particular topic. Now, in fact, when Rajiv Bhai touched upon service tax, I recollect those days when I was working with Sunil Gabawala ji, and the negative list was introduced in the year 2012. And at that point of time, what we had done internally within our team, we had divided sections, and each of the person was supposed to research or work upon a particular section. I was the one who was given the task to work on this place of provision of service, which was introduced at that point in time. Now, fortunately, that somewhere I liked that as a topic very much, and the thought process that I had, especially when this started in the year 2012, and the definition of intermediary was so restrictive to just restrict itself to a person who was facilitating a provision of service between two persons. So that was the initial thought process which I had, and then there was an amendment which happened in 2014. I'll just share my screen. So there was an amendment which happened in the year 2014, and which typically expanded the scope of the definition of this term intermediary, whereby not just a facilitator or an intermediary of service, which was earlier being taxed, they also wanted to tax the facilitator of goods as well. Now that is where all these controversies started coming in from October 2014, where the scope was typically expanded and all the indenting agents were sought to be covered under these intermediary services. And this legacy by default got codified to the GST law. Now, even if we look at this term intermediary, to my understanding, there is lot of emphasis being given this to this term intermediary. However, if you look at this definition from a holistic perspective, in my view, it has a very limited application. Why? I'll tell you. Firstly, we are talking about a specific type of a service, which is an intermediary services. Secondly, when we talk about this intermediary service, the entire purpose of having the intermediary service was to determine the place of supply or the place of service, place of provision of service. There is no other relevance which is there for this definition. So only criteria is you determine the place of supply, and the issue which was started creating the place of supply or the place of provision of service was determined to be the place of the location of the supplier, which effectively made the services of intermediary taxable under the erstwhile service tax law or the GST law. Now, I'll just jump to the definition of intermediary and highlight a couple of points which I felt which are very relevant when we look at intermediary definition, and which will probably set the ball rolling when we discuss the issues forward. Now, if you look at this definition, I have also underlined a couple of words which I think will have to be relevant when we are trying to interpret this definition. So intermediary means a broker, an agent, or any other person. That's the first starting point. And here I will want to stop for a particular minute. It says intermediary means. Now we have various definition under the GST law, which are starting with the phrase includes. Whereas this particular definition, if you see, it starts with the word means. Now, moment we say means, this definition has to be restrictive and exhaustive with the words which are used therein. So we should not go beyond the words which have been provided in this particular definition. That is the one aspect which I want to highlight, and that is where just my understanding what I am trying to say is this definition of intermediary is very restrictive and has a specific reason to be here. Second, who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or services or both. Now, this is the second challenge which we have been facing when we look at this term of intermediary. These words arranges or facilitates have somehow related to be having a far-fetched meaning. And that is where even the departmental authorities are trying to read these words in such a manner that it will cover probably all the type of activities which a person does. One more important word over here is who. Now, when I read this word who, I will have to again go back to the first phrase. So the arrangement or facilitation has to be done by the person who is either a broker or an agent or any other person. So that is how you don't read this word arranges or facilitation in isolation. That is something which is very important. Now, coming to the third part, I'll just elaborate on each of these part a bit later, but this is the broad understanding which I want to put on record. The third aspect is, but does not include a person who supplies such goods or services. Now again here, this is one more area where there is a lot of deliberation and discussion which happen, that if a particular transaction is made on its own account. So typically we are looking at a scenario where the transactions are done on a principal to principal basis, then those transactions are excluded from this definition of intermediary. Now, according to me, this particular phrase was never required. This is just an abundant caution. Why do we want this? Why I'm saying so? Because firstly, when I start with the definition of intermediary, it says intermediary means a broker or an agent. For the time being, I'll just stop here. If you are not a broker, if you are not an agent, then by default you are out of this definition. You don't need to go further. Of course, we will look at the interpretation of any other person and all of these terms later. But primary, my understanding is the third phrase which we are talking about, but it does not include a person who supplies. Again, the words are such goods. Moment we say such goods, then we are talking about a transaction where he is not a facilitator. Purely, then there was no question of having this exclusion. And with this background, so what I'm trying to say is, if you have to look at this definition of intermediary, there are three pillars or three aspects which have to be taken into account. First, the means part of the definition. Intermediary means a broker, an agent, or any other person by whatever name called. Then the second aspect is who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or services or both or securities between two or more persons. And third, but it does not include a person who supplies such goods or services on his own account. These are the three parameters which are very, very important. According to me, the first parameter depicts that we have to have an agency relationship. Unless and until we have this agency relationship, you are out of this definition of intermediary. That is how I particularly read this definition of intermediary. The second important aspect is facilitating or arrangement of supply. Now, this term, I would agree to a fact that this is quite wide in understanding. If you look at the general meaning of facilitation of arrangement, because both of these terms have not been defined under the GST law. But even if you have to literally understand these terms, it might have a wider implication. But unless read in conjunction with the first part, the scope of these particular terms will get reduced to the extent of an agency relationship. And thirdly, wherever we have services on your own account, those are typically excluded from the definition of intermediaries. Now, this is what Rajiv Bhai also touched upon, the definition of agent. Again, if you look at this definition of agent, it says agent means a person, including a factor, a broker. The intermediary definition also uses this term broker. Agent also uses this term agent, a commission agent, Arthia, Del Creda agent, and auctioneer. Ultimately, what they are trying to emphasize is who carries on the business of supply or receipts of goods on behalf of another. So they are trying to convey that a person has to represent somebody else. He should not be doing that as a principal. He should be doing that as an agent. He should be representing somebody else. And that is where this intermediary definition triggers. So the first question which generally comes up is, how do you read this term any other person? Now, when this term any other person comes along with the words brokers and agents, there are two important Latin maxims or principles which are important. One is adjustum generis. We have been discussing on this since a long time, that adjustum generis would mean that whenever this terms any other person is used, you will have to read it along with the words which are there earlier. So if the intermediary definition says means a broker, means an agent, or any other person, then any other person cannot be other than these two. They will have to be somewhere related to these two, and it can't be any person under the earth. That is how you'll have to read. Similarly, nosticur a sociis is also a legal maxim which tries to highlight a similar principle, that if certain words are possible or having a different meaning or a different interpretation, then those words will have to be given a meaning of the family which they belong to. So if there are 4 or 5 words which have been used and one of them has some different meaning being assigned to it, then those words will have to be read along with the other 3 or 4 words. It can't be any interpretation which can be drawn into this. So moment you take both of these legal maxims into account, you will find that the definition restrict itself to an agent or a broker or any other person in the capacity of an agent or a broker, then only gets covered by this definition. Of course, as I said, when we look at these words arrangement or facilitation, in general, they will have far larger meaning. It can include any activities, but they will not be covered by this intermediary unless you are in the capacity of the agent. That is what I understand. On its own account, as I just highlighted, possibly I feel this can be a matter of abundant caution why you want to exclude it, because this emphasizes on the fact that if there is an agency relationship and you are supplying goods, then you have to be out. This is what primarily this particular transactions or this particular definition part excludes. So ultimately, what Rajiv Bhai also highlighted in his opening talk, that intermediary is involved ideally in two supplies at a given point in time. First, it is the supply between the principal and the third party, and second, the supply of his own services to the principal. And that is where he brought in that aspect of result of the first supply and effect of the first supply. Now, this is a very interesting aspect that Rajiv Bhai touched upon. Result of the first supply typically would be an intermediary service, because you have hired an intermediary for doing a particular activity, and on doing his activity, ultimately you are getting a supply being hit. So he should be involved in that second supply. If he is involved in the second supply, then ultimately that is something which gets covered as an intermediary service. Now, and if we look at effect of the first supply, so purely I am doing some activity which has no correlation to the actual supply that you are going to make, then possibly I will not be treated as an intermediary. So most important part, what Rajiv Bhai also highlighted, and as a part of the education guide which has been highlighted, is the intermediary cannot alter the nature of services or goods. It is merely the principal who is supplying the goods to the third party, and he is just a facilitator of that supply. So with this brief opening remarks, I don't want to touch upon this aspect which Rajiv Bhai in detail has elaborated, that the consumption based tax was challenged, and High Court, Gujarat High Court is already against, Bombay High Court is still not decided. So basis that, I would straight away jump into the issues. And the first issue that we have in hand typically is going to discuss on the definition of intermediary only. So there is one company, Nosil Pharma. They are in the business of manufacturing pharmaceuticals formulations, and they are generally exporting to European countries. Now they have appointed one person called as Novartis, who's going to be a marketing partner. Now, moment we say marketing partner, I will just elaborate on the role or the scope of the services of Novartis so that we understand what do they do, and then deliberate and discuss on what will be the services provided them. First, they have the right to appoint agents within the territory of Europe. So they have been given this partnership for the entire territory of Europe. First, they can appoint agents within that territory of Europe. They will advertise, they will market, they will promote the products which have been sold by Nosil Pharma through mass mailing, through mass messaging, and ultimately the remuneration what Novartis is going to get is a fees which is based on the orders which will be procured by Nosil Pharma. So consideration is typically linked to the orders which Nosil will get, and the scope of Novartis is to be a marketing partner for Nosil. So in order to get more sales. Now in this particular example, the GST department in fact has taken a very interesting view to say that this is not an intermediary service. This is actually a marketing or a brand promotion service. And therefore you are not covered by section 13.8. You are covered by the general rule, general section 13.2, and reverse charge will apply. You are supposed to pay IGST. Now we can have discussion. The floor can be open to decide or to discuss whether this will be intermediary services or not.
Only Keval, one thing, the Novartis is located in France.
France, correct, sir.
That is very important. The Nosil is located in India and Novartis is in France.
Yes, sir.
think first we have to discuss whether it is an intermediary, anybody, any participant, whether it is a transaction of intermediary or no.
If anybody wants to refer to this definition of intermediary, I just have opened it. Shikha, your question in the chat box is also probably relevant to this case study or similar to this case study. If you have any thoughts on this, you can share with us.
Yeah, anyone? Keval Harish Kagrana is written, who has procured the order.
Yes, so the order will be procured by this particular person, Novartis. So generally, there can be two scenarios, and we can discuss both of these scenarios. Novartis is doing a marketing activity, and thereafter the order may come. Now, there may be a situation where Novartis is going to negotiate and ultimately finalize the order. That can be one aspect. The second aspect is you are going to ultimately refer to this to NOSIL, and NOSIL is going to take up the ultimate closure of the contract. So we can discuss both these scenarios. What is the answer changing in either of these scenarios? Dipali madam, you want to speak? Yeah, I think Vishal.
Vishal has raised that. Vishal, you can unmute, no?
Vishal,
Vishal yeah.
Or Raj, if you can unmute. Vishal bhai is facing some issue, I guess.
Atul bhai, you are coordinating, no? You can ask.
Yeah, I am coordinating. Yes.
You name the person so that he can unmute and start.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Vishal.
Yeah, Keval, the definition which says that who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or services. Now, see, it doesn't speak anything about whether the facilitation of supply of goods should be directly or indirectly. So does this make sense that the facilitation has to be that there can be not indirect that there can be no indirect supply of goods or services, that facilitation has to be an immediate one. Does it make sense?
So are you trying to say is any form of facilitation
I'm not trying to I have no thoughts on conclusion about that. I'm just trying to highlight another problem. Maybe should we read this as the facilitation of supply of goods or services should be read as directly only, or it should be also indirectly?
Okay, so I would personally feel maybe a direct facilitation, maybe an indirect facilitation, and that is where Harish bhai's question was also relevant to what you said, that is he actually procuring order or just passing on the reference?
See, but Keval, do you think whether you apply whether you apply directly, indirectly, in case you are applying indirect version also, wouldn't the scope increase if you say even indirectly there is a facilitation of supply of goods?
Correct. So that is one aspect, Vishal, what you are trying to highlight. If we say indirect facilitation is also increased, what I was trying to highlight in my earlier talk is, should we directly jump to facilitation, or should we first look at whether he's an agent or a broker, and then we go to this facilitation aspect?
See, basically, to decide an agent and broker, we again need to test this, whether he is facilitating or arranging.
Correct. So let us get others' views also. Yes, Rajiv sir, you want to highlight?
No, Vishal, for deciding agent facilitation, why you want? Because the term agent is already been defined in section 2 subclause 5 of GST, CGST, and where there is nothing of the facilitation. See, if you read the definition, I don't think Keval it doesn't have on this thing, but I'll just read for your benefit.
Yeah.
Agent mean a person including factor, broker, commission agent, adatya, deal creditor agent, auctioneer, or any other mercantile agent by whatever name called, who carries on the business of supply or receipt of good or service or both on behalf of another. This is a definition in section 2 subclause 5. So, and then the intermediary means a broker or an agent that has come. So agent is covered within the intermediary. Now, there is no requirement of being facilitation. If you classify this Novartis as an agent, the moment he is agent, he is covered within the first part of the definition, and thereafter it says who arranges or facilitation. So in that case, it should be whether directly or indirectly, both should be covered within the definition of intermediary. That is what I was trying to say, or rather Keval was trying to say that.
Shall I come in for a minute here?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
See, in my view, this definition given, agent definition given in CGST Act, if you adopt it, in that case, then the entire complexion changes. The principal supplies the goods to the agent, and then agent supplies the goods to the ultimate customer. So that particular definition under the CGST Act was meant for that, because the supply to the agent is also treated as a supply, even without a consideration. So while interpreting the agent, I would not take the definition as given in the CGST Act, because the section 2 itself says, unless and until context otherwise requires. If I take this agent as a definition, then to whatever principal supplies, whatever principal, in that case, you are saying, we are supplying it to the agent, and that agent in turn supplies to this karke. So I think, one should not take the definition of agent as given under section 2, subsection 5. I think agent here in the given case, in the case of an intermediary services, we should take the agent as per the Contract Act, rather than, we should take the meaning more of a broker who doesn't really physically receive the goods, or who doesn't physically, deals with the goods. So in that agent definition of CGST, if you see the last line, carries on the business of, he himself carries on the business of supply or receipt of the goods or the services or both. So he physically handles the good if you go by the definition of the CGST Act. But in my opinion here, in this case, the definition of agent means agent as defined in the General Contract Act, wherein he only acts as an, sort of an, tying up two parties only. He doesn't really, deal in the goods. So I think that is what perhaps you need to keep in mind.
Naresh bhai, that agent definition, the last word you have missed, it is on behalf of another, not in his own account.
See, that is what, but hello, Rajiv bhai, even on behalf of other pan kare che, they pan also, that becomes the supply itself. Ne, hello.
No, 1 minute. If he is doing on his own account, then it will not cover here. It is on behalf of another. There is no comma in between. So when who carries on the business of supply of goods or service or both on behalf of other, it cannot be on his own account. It has to be on behalf of another only.
Then Rajiv bhai, how you will reconcile this with the schedule? Schedule ma je che,
yes,
the transaction without consideration je che,
Sir,
even supplying to the entry 3, supply of goods by the principal to his agent.
Yes.
Where the agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal.
Correct. Now it is for the purpose of the implementation of GST, and if the principal is concerned, is located at different place. Normally we have a deal credit agent or consignment agent, those kind of agents who are stocking the goods also, etc. And because of the GST concept is the wherever the goods are located as well as from wherever the supply happens, that particular place is treated as a place of business, because this concept was there earlier in the service tax regime also, as well as in the VAT regime also. And one more thing is concerned in this law, it has been said wherever the term has been defined under the parallel law, that definition is concerned, you are borrowing it from Contract Act, whereas the section says that wherever the term is being defined under the CG and SG, it will be equally applicable to IG also. And here,
Rajiv, I agree with you, but section 2 itself starts with the opening phrase, unless the context otherwise requires. So
okay,
if you strictly take the definition of agent as per this,
yes.
then then you are covered under the schedule 1 straight Karide. See,
Naresh bhai,
fine.
even otherwise, why wouldn't a commission agent or a consignment agent be covered as an intermediary? Possibly, see what is happening in those scenarios. All of those will become local transactions, and 13.8 will lose its relevance to that extent. But otherwise, I would feel even those type of person might be considered as an intermediary.
Keval, when it comes to section 12, there will not be much of the issues.
Correct, correct, sir, correct.
Because there the POS remains same whether it is agent or intermediary.
Correct. So Deepali madam wants to.
Yeah, may I?
Yes,
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 yes.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I just heard what Naresh bhai and Rajiv bhai said. This is just my view, of course, that the definition of agent in CGST Act, as Naresh bhai pointed out, that if Schedule 1 gets triggered, then agent is supplying goods on behalf of the principal, matlab agent himself is selling the goods. But in the intermediary, there is no, it is pure facilitating. It is not, the agent is not supplying. So that is the major difference. And here in our case, Novartis is a marketing partner and he has been given all the marketing rights. At the same time, if you will read, the fees for marketing rendered by them is based on the orders procured. So maybe the term they must have used marketing partner, but basically he is facilitating the supply of goods and services between Nosil Pharma India and the other company in France, from where he will procure the order. So Novartis is an intermediary in my view.
Okay. So Deepali madam, just to summarize, somewhere because the fees is linked to the orders procured, there is a possibility to say that he is engaged in the supply, he is engaged in facilitating or arranging this transaction, and the intermediary definition might take.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
Haresh bhai also wants to.
Yeah, can I speak?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, in case of 13.8 intermediary agent, their agent definition is to be read just as a agent or broker who brings two parties together or who facilitate the transaction and who sometimes play a role in concluding the contract. If it is decided in this present case, Novartis is playing a role of bringing two parties or concluding the contract, then definitely the Novartis is facilitating the transaction and it will be covered in the definition of intermediary. As Naresh bhai pointed out, agent definition in CGST, though this agent definition is specially given in CGST to facilitate the transaction of agency also, when principal send goods to agent and agent sell the material, property in the good does not part to agent, but to take the transaction and the GST, this agent definition has been kept. But that does not mean that agent definition does not apply to a pure broker or commission who facilitate the transaction without delivery of goods. So my submission is that agent definition in 2.5 in the CGST Act cover both type of agent. Agent which take delivery and sell the goods, agent who do not take goods and who facilitate the transaction. That is my submission.
Correct.
Fine.
Saket wants to add something.
Haresh bhai, I will differ from you very respectfully. If you read the definition wholly, agent means a person who does all these things, who carries on the business of supply or receipt of the goods or services or both on behalf of the others. So this here the more emphasis on the physical handling of the goods by the agent. That's why the consignment agent or a del credit agent or this kind of agents are covered in the definition of agent as given in the schedule definition 2.5. But when we are interpreting the agent here in the intermediary services, if you take that agent definition which has been given in the CGST Act, then that entire agent definition becomes redundant. As Dipali has rightly said, in that case, agent supplies under the GST law, he supplies the goods on his own, on his own activity. Then it becomes, by the deeming fiction, because Schedule 1 applies to the IGST Act also, correct?
Okay. Mhm.
So then, Naresh bhai, then that exclusion will only make sense to that extent.
Haan ji.
Otherwise, that exclusion would not be required.
Who carries on the business supply of goods services on the behalf of?
No, sir. Exclusion in the intermediary definition.
Intermediary.
On
So if
account
I-
what only? I think I agree with you. Hello.
Correct.
That makes it very clear. Yeah, okay.
I think, Keval,
Yeah, Vishal bhai.
Keval,
So,
I think should we more focus on dissecting the secondary part of the definition of intermediary, which says which arranges or facilitates a supply, because whatever we conclude on the initial part, agent or so and so, the definition itself says or any other person. Now intermediary is more defined by the work which is mentioned in the later part, that is the one who facilitates, rather than naming the person. Maybe he's an agent or whatever name.
Correct.
So I think
Vishal, sorry, differ from you.
please.
Once you are not an agent or broker, or a person who is similar to the agent or broker. See, as far the principle of ad judicia generis.
Yeah.
You first, if you are not an agent, broker, or person in nature of agent broker, you did not see the definition ahead. You are out of the intermediary there and then.
But then maybe I may not be an agent, may not be a broker. Is there a possibility where I by my functions, if I am facilitating, arranging, do you mean to say that even if my functions I am performing those functions, I would not be covered?
In my
Vishal bhai,
opinion, no, you will not be covered. Hello.
Vishal bhai, I can give you one example. A
Yeah.
clearing agent. A
Yeah,
clearing agent is also arranging or facilitating the supply.
Okay.
But that is not what is anticipated to be covered in this particular transaction.
Vishal, I stated one more thing. Result of it and effect of it also is there. There, the agent has to be this. The first supply should be result of the intermediary's efforts. Keval has rightly said the clearing agent is maybe facilitating, but the supply never happens because of his efforts. Transaction has already been happened between two people. Actually, intermediary is concerned. No, he should be in picture. He should be aware of, and rather all the three parties should be aware about the supplies. I mean to say, you are supplying goods to Keval and I'm intermediate. Then we three of us should know all the transaction. Of course, pricing may not be concerned. That is what in intermediary. In clearing agent, sir, that will never happen.
Bhavin bhai Mehta wants to
Keval,
add.
yeah, Keval, thank you for giving me an opportunity. And my thought on this is basically when you call an intermediary, now in the particular facts of the case which you have mentioned, you mentioned that Novartis is marketing that. Now the job
Correct.
of Novartis is only marketing, that is the main services.
Yes.
Then it will be out from intermediary. But
Correct.
to procure the client, and if he is doing the marketing,
Correct.
we have to see the contract. If the contract says based on whatever the orders he procures, and he gets a commission, irrespective of how the consideration is fixed. Consideration, even though it may be fixed on the based on the orders, it doesn't
Right.
mean then that particular the transaction is intermediate. So what we have to see, if his assignment is for marketing that, and for marketing he will be paid consideration. The consideration is based on so and so facts. Now in that case he will be out of the interview. But however, if he say whatever the orders he procures, he will get the commission on that. For getting the orders he markets, irrespective, then he will be an intermediary. So what I think Rajiv bhai initially rightly mentioned, there the result of what? The second result of between the two supplies is a intermediary. So here we have to see first whether it is a result of that for getting the supply between the NOSIL and the foreign client, getting that commission, then yes, it is intermediary, otherwise it is no. That is my take.
Correct. So what Haresh Bhai's question was actually precisely that is the determining factor, whether he is procuring orders or not. And basis that we might be able to conclude whether it is an intermediary or not. That is what Bhavin Bhai you are trying to highlight.
Yes, thank you.
Can we
Yes,
also discuss in the scope it is written market and promote? So is there any difference between these two? The promote is something and market is a very, very wider term which also includes procuring order. Can we say like that? Yeah, sorry, Nilesh Bhai is there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nilesh, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, Nilesh Bhai.
See, what I personally believe is that in this particular case, what is happening is the Novartis appears to be, from what you are discussing, appointed as a marketing agent. Now, that effort may result in what you call getting an order or not getting an order. If the consideration gets defined based on the value of orders, that does not make it a supply or a service provided by him to facilitate the supply of goods. It should be regarded as marketing service provided, and it should be treated as outside the limb of intermediary services.
Correct.
May I add something?
Yes, Nemin.
Just to take the point forward, you could also have an employee who, instead of getting a fixed salary, could actually get salary based on how much sales are happening. So in that case, even the employee would not become an intermediary. So the consideration should never define, the determination of the consideration should never define whether the person becomes an intermediary or not.
Correct. I agree with what you said. The manner of determining the consideration may be different, but the scope of service will ultimately have to decide whether it is an intermediary or not.
Keval, Anand Ketan has also paused in the chat box, stating that whether the distinction has to be drawn between marketing service and customer solicitation. If marketing service cannot be intermediary, then trigger for solicitation between two persons has not started, and then it is not an intermediary, it will be an RCM.
Correct. That is where Rajiv Bhai also highlighted this aspect of effect and the result of the supply.
Right.
I think Keval, you should now give your views. We have a long way to go.
So in this particular case, I would feel that again the determining factor is what Haresh Bhai rightly pointed out, and that is where what Rajiv Bhai was also trying to highlight, that when the words are used market and promote, are we talking about concluding of contracts and getting of orders? If your scope is getting extended to such aspect, then you will be able to call this person as an intermediary. Otherwise, it will not be classified as an intermediary. And so just to conclude, that determining factor is going to be, is your role restricted yourself to just market the products of the company, and beyond that, if you are not doing, then even if there is an arrangement or facilitation, then you are not actually involved in the supply of the transaction, the ultimate supply which is going to happen, then you will still be out of the definition of intermediary. Yes, Rajiv sir, your thoughts on this?
If you read the scope, the first bullet point of the issue, that he has right to appoint agents. See, I personally feel there is a difference between promoting and marketing. The promoting is concerned as a result of promoting, your transaction may or may not click. But as a effect of promotion, transaction may click. Like say Dabur Chyawanprash, Amitabh Bachchan is promoting it. So he is never marketing it basically. We can just give any such example. Now here in this scope, it says that appoint an agent. Now if I have to only carry out the activity of promoting, for that appointing agent is a rare case normally. Normally, you will not appoint agent. You will require mailing, advertising, or what all other street shows, etc. And those cannot be agent. Then those will be services. But he's appointing agent. So kind of a sub-agent. That's one. Then market itself, I personally feel when you say marketing, apart from that promoting, both the words are used, and that means marketing includes procuring of the order. In this, I will try to give in that fashion, and his job is to get the orders also. He's making the efforts also. Of course, I do agree that payment of remuneration is not a criteria, that I fully agree with that. But the scope, the way it has been worded, in my view, because the word is appointing agent as well as marketing, and then you can also see there are other wordings there: advertise, promote, etc. And they have used the word to the buyer of retail, wholesale on the basis of so there are various mediums. But because of the appointing agent as well as marketing, I feel in my view this is a transaction of intermediary. And in that case, as the case may be, place of supply will be France, and there may not be a tax liability. That can be a strong case of argument in that favor. This is my view.
So in fact, this particular question is other way around, where we are looking at an intermediary outside India. So if we are able to satisfy it being an intermediary, then reverse charge does not apply. But if you are not able to satisfy intermediary, then the reverse charge liability will trigger.
Yes.
Only Keval, I will tell one thing for the benefit of all the participants.
Yes, sir.
We have a very great judgment on this in the service tax law advance ruling in case of a GoDaddy.
Correct, sir.
If you go by that, if you read that GoDaddy case, you will be exactly understanding the difference between the marketing, brand promotion, and other thing, and the intermediary. So as I agree with you, Keval, when you are saying, okay, once procurement of order is my responsibility, then definitely I am an intermediary. But before that, whatever you have written up, see, even agent creating an agent network also, I will feel it is not an intermediary services. Creating advertising and other things also is not. So I agree with you. Okay, last point: if your responsibility is to procure the orders and you are being paid, remunerated on the basis of that,
correct.
That itself is a strong case that you are intermediary, foreign intermediary, and the reverse charge will not trigger because you are procuring the order and you are getting your remuneration based on the procurement of the order.
Procurement. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So again, what I have tried to do in most of the questions, I've tried to look at each of these three questions, and if ultimately when these three questions have an answer as yes, then probably only this intermediary definition triggers. In this particular example, I felt that agency relation would not exist. It's more like a marketing service, and therefore it should not have been treated as an intermediary unless you are involved in the procurement of the orders. So with that, we move on to the second case study. Again, here, in fact, the case study is direct to the aspect that this is an intermediary. There is one person who is Maganlal and Company in India. He is an intermediary of a foreign company, Suzuki Limited from Japan. Now here, the transaction is, there is one PQR Limited in Mumbai who has given an order to Maganlal and Company. In fact, order which will be ultimately supplied by Suzuki Japan, and that is where he becomes an intermediary, and the goods will be delivered to PQR Limited Dubai. So these are the facts of the case, and the questions or the issues that we are going to deliberate here is whether the commission what Maganlal is going to get on this particular transaction, whether that commission will qualify as an interstate or an intrastate supply. So whether CGST, SGST would apply or whether IGST would apply. So this is the precise, there is no question whether it will be an intermediary or not. The fact itself suggests it is an intermediary. The distinction is whether it is going to be an intra or an interstate supply. Yes, we can have views from the group. Now, primarily why this question is coming up is entirely because of section 7 and section 8, and more importantly with respect to section 8, because of these wordings where section 8 is starting, subject to the provisions of section 12. the supply of services where the location and the place of supply are in the same state, it shall be treated as an intrastate supply. So this word used, subject to the provisions of section 12, whether that has an impact on this transaction. Secondly, when we look at section 7, there is also a residuary provision, section 7(5)(c), which says a supply of goods or services or both in the taxable territory, which is not an intrastate supply, then it becomes an interstate supply. So this is an provision which is creating this entire confusion or dispute whether this transaction should be treated as an interstate or an intrastate. Yes, any thoughts on this, anybody? Shikha, you can unmute and speak if you can.
I think this should be intrastate because the place of supply is in India and the provider is also in India. So CGST, SGST should be levied and it is an intrastate transaction.
Okay, so you are going by section 13(8) and place of supply is in India and therefore CGST, SGST should apply, right?
Yes, because place of supply is the place of service provider. And here Magan Lal, who is in India, is a provider of services, intermediary services, and therefore the place of supply of his place is the place of supply, and this is an intrastate transaction. As per my view.
Keval, somebody has asked who is receiving commission. I think, is it typography error? It is Maganlal and Company who is receiving commission. Somebody has asked this in chat box.
Yes. Last. Sorry, it is Maganlal. There is a typo error.
It is Maganlal who receives.
Maganlal.
Yeah, Mr. Subramani.
Yes, sir. Sir, if you go through section 7, particularly section 7, subsection 3, it talks about subject to the provision of section 12. Supply of services where the location of supplier and the place of supply are in a different state. But if you go through section 8, section 8, 1 minute, sir. Section 8,
it is reproduced at the end of the material given.
Yeah,
if you want, you
section,
can correct.
If you go through section 8, subject to the provision of section 12, supply of services where the location of supply and the place of supply are in the same state or in a same union territory shall be treated as an intrastate supply. But in section 7, subsection 3, the subject to section 13 is missing. It talks about only subject to the provision of section 12. And if you go through section 7(5), subsection C, it talks about in the non-taxable territory not being an intrastate supply. So we have examined the section 8, whether it is an intrastate supply or not. According to section 8, it is not an intrastate supply. But if you go through section 7(5)(c), 7(5)(c) says in the taxable territory not being an intrastate supply and not covered elsewhere. Not covered elsewhere, it shall be treated to be a supply of goods or services in the course or interstated or commerce. So therefore, my view is in section 7(5)(3) that 13 is missing and it is not an intrastate supply. Once it is not an intrastate supply, section 7(5)(c) says that it will be treated as an intrastate supply. So therefore, my view is it should be intrastate supply.
Okay, so IGST would apply.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, just one thought. Why did we say it is out of 8?
Yes, sir.
Why did we say it is not fitting in 8? Section 8?
Subject to the provision of section 12, supply of services where the location of the supplier and the place of supply are in the same state. So there also say we are saying here the supply is where the supplier and the recipient are in two different, it is not within India. So therefore section 13 is applicable. So therefore 13 is not, mentioned in anywhere. So therefore my view is that it should be treated as interstate supply.
Okay. Anybody else on this?
Keval,
Yes, Hemant.
Mr. Sabu has raised that point that we cannot ignore section 12. Basically, the destination-based consumption tax, in this case, consumption cannot be decided, hence it should be IGST distributed in all states. Cross-border transactions are envisaged as an interstate transaction. The literally term subject to is dependent upon. Thus, when a provision is made subject to another provision, the former cannot override the latter.
Okay. So section 8 cannot override section 12. That is what possibly this means. That if there is something which is given in section 8, you will have to first respect what section 12 says, and thereafter basis section 12, you will have to read this further. That is what my understanding of this particular provision says.
Correct. Agreed.
Correct. Correct.
Anybody wants to add, or should I just give my views on this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
Keval, you can.
I have a different view than what Mr. Subramaniam said. I would personally feel first, as before going to section 7.5c, we will have to look at section 8 per se. Section 8 says subject to the provisions of section 12. That of course there are subject to words, and there is also a notwithstanding word which gets generally used in a taxing statute. Notwithstanding is going to say that you override section 12, whereas subject to says you will have to respect section 12. If there is contrary provision then section 12, then you don't read this section 8 further. But here, if we talk about, firstly it is only subject to 12 and not subject to 13. So if I read this further, where the location of supplier is Maganlal, which is in the tax in the same state. The place of supply, as determined as per section 13.8, is also in the same state, and therefore it should be treated as an interstate supply. That is intrastate supply. Secondly, even if somebody says that you have to look at section 7.5c. 7.5c says supply of goods or services or both in the taxable territory. Now, to decide in the taxable territory, what inference do we take? Whether we look at again section 13 and decide the place of supply basis that, if yes, then probably section 8 is the correct place to look at. You can't then jump to section 7.5. So here again, there is no clarity when we look at section 7.5 that to decide whether a supply is in the taxable territory or not, then subclause C will require some reference to determine what shall be the taxable territory. And that is where I feel section 8.2 would be more appropriate to classify this as an intrastate supply. Of course, one challenge, which is the second part of this question will arise, is this is a transaction where there is an out and out supply, which is happening from Japan to Dubai, and the commission or intermediary services with respect to out and out supply have been given a specific exemption under entry number 12AA of the exemption notification 9/2017. The problem under this exemption is this exemption has been given under the IGST Act, which specifically try to capture this transaction, and that is where one may find some difficulty to identify an exemption from CGST and SGST. There is an exemption which has been given under the IGST. This can be one reference which somebody can take to say that the government or the law envisages it to be an IGST transaction, and that is where IGST exemption has been provided. Personally, I feel this is not an IGST transaction. It will have to be a CGST and an SGST transaction. This exemption notification is going to create some problem.
Keval, I have
Yes,
I have
Naresh
a
bhai,
totally
please.
different view, exactly opposite to your views. Now, on this, let me share with all the participants. We have written the matter to the CBEC to get the clarification on this, because I firmly believe in order to fall under the intrastate, you should first fall into the section 12. Because subject to section 12, so you rightly said you first respect the section 12. If you are falling under section 12, then you come to section 8, and then you decide whether you are, intrastate or not. Here, the transaction is service recipient is located outside India, service provider is in India. So you are not falling under 12. So you cannot go to the 8. That's why you are going to the residuary, something which is not an intrastate. That becomes the interstate transaction. And believe me, this IGST provision, this IGST exemption, that itself, justifies that this is perhaps the intention of the government. And let me tell you, there was a clarification, at least in the respect of the banking and financial services, where they've gone on the same principle that you are saying. But thereafter some controversy has come. There are Maharashtra Advanced Ruling Authority judgment also is on that, which has held it is an interstate supply. Mr. Borade is, very logical this thing. So thereafter, the people have started thinking of, and we ourselves, our office, have written a very detailed representation to the Central Board of, CBEC. We have written to the Finance Ministry. We have written both the Commissioner State as well as Commissioner Central also. In spite of 5 or 7 different reminders, we have not got any specific answer. The problem is this. I have received both kind of notices where I have treated IGST. They say it is CGST, SGST. When I was treated as, my client is treated CGST, SGST, then they will come out with a notice of IGST. So, this is something, in my very strong view, I personally feel it is a IGST transaction. I feel it is a IGST transaction. Initially, the problem was coming in the portal also. It was not taking the transaction as an IGST, but now even the portal has been amended to the best of my knowledge. So I personally feel it is a IGST transaction. I am not really able to, for the sort of time, I am not articulating it, but I personally feel section 12 mein padega, to it becomes interstate supply, both the parties, or intrastate supply, both the parties are in India. Then it becomes the intrastate supply. Otherwise, it becomes the interstate supplies. Even one party is outside India, it becomes the interstate supply.
Section, I agree with what Naresh Bhai said, because see, section 13 says that when the supplier is in India and the recipient, because the consumption of that supply actually occurs outside India.
Correct.
He gets the benefit of the order.
Okay.
I may get commission, but the consumption of my intermediary service happened where with Maruti Suzuki Japan. It benefited of getting an order for which I have received the payment.
Yes, sir. So ultimate consumption, you are saying it depends on the receiver of my service.
Yes, naturally, because who is consumer? Because consumption-based tax, we say GST is a consumption-based, destination-based tax. That's the first principle also.
Nilesh bhai, how it is relevant? Consumption-based tax principle, High Court, we have 2 decisions now. Even if consumption-based tax, but government has, with all wisdoms, can define place of supply, no? So still the constitutional validity is already upheld. So what you say, consumption, destination-based consumption tax is fine, but there are provisions which are contrary to, which are upheld by the government to that extent and POS. So that is one part of it. Logically also you are right, and it is destination-based consumption, but still the provisions are not ultra virus. That's one. Secondly, one point is the section 8, why it should fall under section 8, or I mean to say, subject to provision of section 12 means you have to give respect to section 12, and notwithstanding means you ignore that section that Keval has highlighted. So that is where I will tilt slightly on this. It will be to section 8. Only one challenge is about that exemption notification, that is 12AA entry. And for your information, the Gujarat High Court Materials Recycling Association case, there also it has held that it is an intrastate transaction. Of course, Mumbai High Court, both the judges have a different counter review. One judge was of the view intrastate, the other judge was say interstate, that's fine. But Gujarat High Court unanimously, it is intrastate. Of course, advance ruling, it is, but judicial body, High Court, intrastate. So there is a challenge only I feel is about that exemption notification, because we have no exemption under the CG and SG correspondingly, and that is, I think, in the second issue we will face challenge there to that extent.
But
just to add-
practically
Nilesh bhai.
speaking, you see, after paying, if I'm going to get the ITC, then it should not be too much of a, what do you call, other implication. No?
Fine,
No,
that is-
your ITC is not into question.
A problem nothing. If you paid,
they may
I-
ask again, no?
CGST, AGST, the problem of, getting the refund, you have to pay that first and then you get the refund. And there is another challenge also.
Hmm.
If the period of refund is over, the 2 years period of refund is over, then what you will do?
No, I think the refund becomes payable only once you pay the correct tax. That's the view I hold.
So these issues will come in. Nilesh bhai, that is what Naresh bhai is
Yes,
trying
yes,
to add.
yes.
Naresh bhai, just to counter
Yeah.
what you said in IGST, suppose we read, I'll give you a different scenario. Let's say there is a foreign tourist coming to India and he stays in a hotel in India. Whether that hotel will charge IGST or whether it will go under 8.2. This might probably help us in again understanding this CGST and SGST versus IGST. Bhavin bhai has some thoughts.
This kind of problems are there even in the maintenance of the, the repair of the goods of the foreign party, even the, the other, things are there. Let me tell you, hello. If this answer were so simple, the government would have given me the answers, after giving this much Karine. We have discussed with 1 or 2 senior officers over here. So they, the problem is this, they are convinced it is IGST transaction, but for some reasons, they are not endorsing it.
Keval, may I?
Yes,
Can I-
Bhavin bhai, please.
Yeah. I think you rightly read, subject to the provision of section 12. That I'm reading 8.2. When we say
Correct.
subject to provision of section 10, mean that it cannot override section 12. You have to read the section 12. But doesn't mean you don't have to go to section 13. Correct? That means 13 will also fall under this section 8.2.
Yes, yes.
So I agree with you. Yes, it will be CGST, SGST. Now coming to your query regarding that when the foreign tourist comes here. So then when you say destination means it is here located here. So it is consumed in India only. You don't require merely because if suppose a foreigner comes here and I supply the goods to here, it doesn't become an export. The goods has to travel from here to other country.
No, sir, I would defer to that because consumption will depend on ultimately a lot of other parameters also, and location of recipient specifically defines that if you are not falling in either of these, you don't have a permanent place of business, you don't have a fixed establishment, then it has to be the local place of residence, your usual place of residence. So your usual place of residence will have to be taken there. So that is where again this controversy may come in.
Keval, I again beg to differ with you here. Sorry to debate. I don't want to debate and waste other people's time. But see that recipient also, then the Naresh bhai mentioned initially, unless the context otherwise require. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose. The government will not get the revenue also, because if you go to foreign country and you pay the tax, unless government make a specific provision when you travel again back to your country, and at the airport the taxes are being returned back to you.
Can I say something? When we
Yeah,
are deciding, we have specifically separate POS rules for different type of transactions, no sir? So
Yes.
people, the foreigner may be located abroad, but he has come visited in India. What type of transaction he is availing? There is a separate POS rule for that. Okay, so comparing that with our transaction of broking, perhaps how far it will help basically, because some transaction earlier, in the old service tax regime, we have performance based and location based, etc. Those kind of classifications where now we have section 12 and 13. I think to that extent, it will be far stretching. And I personally feel when we have a specific rule for specific transaction, rather not rule, but it's a statute rather, I'll say provision.
Correct.
So better not, one should not compare in that area. That is
Correct. Nilesh bhai, Abu Ali
Keval,
also
Keval.
written on the-
Only my one submission here.
Hmm.
My one submission here. What we are confusing, we are saying a place of supply and a location of the supplier are same. That's why the place of supply is falling over here. Correct?
Correct, sir. Correct.
But I am saying, you have to first see where you are going to rule 12, section 12
Section
rather.
12.
When both the parties, the place of supply of services, where the location of the supplier recipient both are in India, then only you are
Yeah.
seeing 12.
Correct.
Correct, sir.
Correct.
And otherwise, you have to go to section
Section 13.
13.
Correct.
Okay, now, if I simply, ekdam as a crude method, you read now section 8,
Yes, sir.
and you read 8 ma, you read this, you put, where the location of the supplier recipient or India, the supply of services where the location of supplier and place of supply of the services is the same. And 8.2 will not apply here because the both are not in India.
Sir, in
Both
fact,
are India.
yeah.
They
in
both are
fact,
not in India. Both are not in
Both
India.
are-
See, you are confusing. Place of supply is in India.
correct.
Service provider is in India. But the section
Correct.
12 says you
Correct.
have to see location of the supplier and recipient.
Naresh bhai, I got your point. It's a valid point what you are trying to highlight. How I am reading, I'll just tell you. Subject to provisions of section 12, jo hai na, sir, for the time being, let us ignore that. For the time being.
Ah.
Let's read further. It says supply of services where the location of supplier and place of supply are in the same state, then it shall be an intrastate supply. So here everybody is, I think, clear that both of them are in the same state. The
There is
location
no
of
problem.
supply.
I agree
Yes.
with you.
Agree.
And now let us read subject to provisions of
But
section
hello,
12.
but એની માટે તારે શું કરવું જોઈએ કે then you are falling in section 12, correct?
Correct.
no. Wait,
I
Naresh
should
bhai,
respect
here-
only
We are
Naresh
not
bhai,
following.
Naresh bhai, that first line you are saying now that for that you should fall in section 12, that is where is the difference of opinion.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because
sir.
by writing here subject to provision 12 means you have to give respect to section 12. You need
Actually,
not
Rajiv,
fall
અત્યારે
in
પાસે છે
section
ને,
12.
અત્યારે મારી પાસે છે ને, I don't have my notes. We have analyzed what is the meaning of section subject to Supreme Court na judgment thi we have analyzed it કરીને અને we could convince even Mr. Krishnan also. The Krishnan was showing also the view that it is, basically CGST, SGST, we have convinced him, So if I am not having that notes now, my memory does not, what exactly the thing, but subject to means if I am falling under section 12, then I have to read further rule 8.2 કરીને. I am not falling under section 12 itself. See, I think let us go further.
Yes, sir.
Acha,
Sir,
Keval-
Yash Dada and Haresh bhai, if you
Yeah,
can come in and then Yash.
yeah. I had one point. See, if we conclusion come, this is an intrastate transaction subject to CGS in AGST. Then my question is, how the benefit of that entry 12AA of notification 9/2
That is the
under
next, that is the
IGST,
next question. That is the next question.
how the benefit of that will be available? Otherwise, it will never be available.
Correct. Then that is where Naresh bhai is saying that is one of the factor to say it is IGST.
Yeah.
No, I am not saying. I'm saying that, that it is IGST only. It is the IGST transaction. That's why the exemption has been given in the IGST Act.
Haresh bhai,
Correct.
I'll say one thing,
Yeah.
that exemption entry was not there on 1st July 2017.
Agreed. Yes.
Yes.
Now tell me on 1st July 2017, how you will interpret? Now there is no exemption.
No, I am not saying.
So-
I am saying.
So,
that
Mr. Rajiv bhai,
this entry
most of the persons are convinced that is an intrastate CGS.
No, hello, there is here, we are not here to convince anybody. We are just
Yeah.
debating and discussing.
Yeah, yeah. So
What
the
I'm
question,
telling you, exemption notification will not determine your
Agreed.
intrastate and interstate. That is what I
Agreed.
was trying to say. That's all.
Agreed, Rajiv bhai, then at least some meaning is to be given. See, when
Yeah,
government has
obviously.
given-
No, that
The-
is something we can say anomaly
the-
or that is going to be a challenge. That is what Keval was telling.
that we have to balance between these two.
Keval, I just want to highlight one point. that
Yeah, madam.
Maganlal and company is in India, that other person is outside India. Technically, only by virtue of 13.8, which is a deeming fiction, which says that the place of supply is India, otherwise is an export of service transaction. Correct? So when there is two countries are involved, I believe it has to be IGST and not CGST, SGST.
Dipali,
yeah.
that your argument doesn't support the courts have already stated, no. That is where the Gujarat High Court decision, as well as in Mumbai High Court, one of the judges says, no, it is not export. That is, and constitutional valid, it is not at all export, because that is what a general provision, specific provision, you have POS. That was Honorable Gujarat High Court has stated.
Yeah, I agree, Rajiv bhai, but still the involvement is between the two countries. When there is an involvement between the two countries, 75C will definitely trigger that. In spite the supply is being in taxable territory, it is not an intrastate transaction. So I personally believe it's totally an IGST transaction.
Fine.
Yash wants to add. Yash, please.
Yeah. Only one point. In this Dharmender M. Jani, if you read the judgment given by both the judges, at least on one point, what I see that they have a consensus by saying that at least it is not intrastate supply, because Justice Ujjwal Bhuvan, according to him, that by reading 13.8b and 18.8.2 together, by a deeming fiction and export of service is being made a local supply.
Correct.
And Justice Abhay Ahuja said that clearly you should not read 8.2. And when you read material recycling, Gujarat High Court, there the logic which was given by the High Court was that basically this exemption 20/2019 was specifically brought so that it is an intrastate supply. So what I'm trying to say is that probably the reasoning given in material recycling was on a different footing. They have interpreted this exemption in 20/2019 to say because they wanted to exempt IGST, that's why they have brought this, and they wanted to tax under CNS, which I understand, according to me, is not the proper way of looking at it. And when you read both these judgment given by both these judges, at least they were on consensus that this is not intrastate supply. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Thanks, Yash. So, sir, should we conclude on this? Because we clearly have a difference of view on this.
Yes.
So again, as what Rajiv bhai rightly suggested, the second part of this question gets answered by default in such a way that if you are going for CNS as or an intrastate supply, then the exemption notification might not be able to support you to that extent. And there are going to be challenges to say whether you can take these exemptions with respect to your CGST and SGST liability. So if you are with the fact that it is going to be an interstate supply, then definitely this exemption is going to help you, and to that extent there will be no taxation which will be there.
Keval, I have one more thing to say. That second question is concerned. No, another challenge is there apart from this. If you read the table, that entry number 12AA, in the clause 3, description of service is given. What are the services which is sought to be exempted by 12AA? The condition here, sir, service provided by intermediary, so which is Maganlal in India, when location of both, that is supplier, that is Japan, Suzuki, and recipient of goods is outside taxable territory. Now here, who is the recipient? So whether it is Dubai or it is India, in my view, it is India who is recipient, because Japan will be raising bill on India. And you will not get exemption irrespective of our difference of opinion of IGCG. Because you are not fulfilling the condition. Only goods are going outside India, but the buyer never goes outside India. So there will be separate invoice will be raised by India to Dubai on his branch office by PQR in this case. That's how. So you will never be getting exemption benefit in this transaction.
Rajiv bhai, from the PQR's perspective, PQR India's perspective, it is totally an out and out transaction.
Yeah, PQR, we are talking about the.
I agree. What I'm trying to say is that I understand recipient is PQR Limited India, but from PQR perspective, it is totally an out and out transaction.
That is schedule 3.7.
So then the 12AA can trigger.
No, then 12AA, what he is telling, see, delivery is getting out and out, no? So it is a falling in schedule 3 of section 7 as regarding the supply is concerned. There will not be exports. but it will not be supply whatsoever by virtue of entry in Schedule 3. That is for PQR India is concerned. But right now, this exemption we are talking is about the commission which is getting Magan Lal and company on this transaction, whether it will get exemption, that we are talking. And for that, the condition says that the goods are receiver of the goods and the supplier of goods, both should be outside India. Then only his commission gets exempted. That is what the entry 12AA says. Now, in that case, the receiver is not outside India. It's because receiver is who is receiver of the goods. So who has placed the order? PQR has placed the order to Japan. And that is intermediary has found out that PQR wants the delivery at Dubai. That's a different issue. But he is always the buyer of the goods. And that's why Suzuki will raise invoice on PQR India only.
Yes, that I agree that Suzuki will raise invoice on PQR India only.
The moment you agree to that, that means that 12AA exemption notification in column 3, the conditions are not fulfilled. And that's how that commission does not get benefit of exemption.
Yes, that is what Rajiv Bhai is trying to highlight. The location and receiver of goods, not the service. It's the goods has to be both outside India. And here, because Mumbai office of PQR has raised this order or purchase order, and that is where they might face a challenge.
Recipient of good is also defined, no?
Yes, a person who is obliged to pay.
So he is recipient, PQR India is recipient. That is what I was trying to say. I hope, Deepali, that's clear, no?
Yeah. I am aware of that, what you are saying, but only because it's an out and out transaction, I was highlighting that 12AA, you can take the benefit of 12AA because it is an out and out transaction. As far as the whole transaction is concerned, if you look at the transaction as a whole,
Madam, that Deepali, that out and out transaction is for PQR. This exemption is not for PQR, it is for Magan Lal.
Yeah, correct.
So secondly, this exemption also came in from only 2019. So before 2019, we always had this taxability.
But I think in the transaction, that's why we have given date of July 21.
Correct.
Question me, current date.
Mr. Arup wanted to highlight something, sir. Mr. Arup?
No, I think it is covered. So I think it's covered.
Okay, thanks. Sir,
whatever I want to discuss, that is already covered.
Okay. Sir, we'll move on to third question, Rajiv sir.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So here, the third question talks about a scenario where there is an Oxford University. Now they have appointed XYZ Inc. Of UK, and the scope of services, they are going to market their courses and enroll students from India. They are going to consult, advise, arrange, and organize tours or visits for representatives of Oxford University to whichever schools or colleges they feel that it will be appropriate for them to market their courses. They will also be developing the content and the design for the course material for the students and coordinate with students for completing the enrollment process. Now, this is the scope of work between an Oxford, which is again outside India, and XYZ in UK. This work has been further given or subcontracted by XYZ Inc. to ABC India. The scope is to consult, advise, and arrange the visits of representative of either XYZ or the Oxford University to India. Again, develop content and design course for clients of XYZ, carrying out research and prepare a study report about various schools and institutions across India, and various courses which are offered by university, and give them suggestion that what will suit to the Indian students, and for which the consideration has been agreed as a fixed fee of rupees 5,000 euros per month. Again, the questions which we are trying to address over here is whether ABC India will be treated as an intermediary or not. So that is the question which we are trying to address. Yes, if anyone wants to come.
This is principal to principal supply. Nothing is there, where you are trying to facilitating you are trying to give the services on your own account on a principal to principal basis. ABC is doing all these things, which really it supports. It's not facilitating the provision of the services by it basically supports the XYZ. So, and there are no three parties over here. He
Correct.
provides services to the XYZ only. So, in my opinion, it's a very clear, it's an absolutely crystal clear case. It's a marketing support case, or or it's a academic contents you are providing them. You are providing, so it basically doesn't have any element of intermediary services whatsoever.
Yes. Nilesh bhai, any thoughts on this? You have raised your hand. Naresh bhai, unfortunate parties, we have Rajiv bhai already has a show cause on this specific issue.
Nilesh bhai, you can unmute yourself.
अरे केवल suppose तो मारा बाजूवाला
Hello.
पार्टी पर मने आवे छे यार हेलो
No,
Nilesh bhai, please.
see, if we read the
we
definition,
are also yeah.
if you read the definition under section 2 subsection 13 of IGST, it says any person who arranges or facilitates the supply of services between two or more persons. Okay, generally these two or more persons have to be, one of them has to be the supplier of goods or services and other has to be the consumer. Now that company for which it is doing this activity is not a supplier of service or goods.
Correct.
The ultimate supply of service happens from the original company to the company in London, and this Indian company can be treated as a one who is trying to supply a marketing service or support service to the company in UK, as stated by Naresh bhai also.
Correct. Yes, sir, I would also agree with what Nilesh bhai and Naresh bhai said. It is purely a P2P transaction. There is no question of any agency or a broker or a consulting kind of a agency kind of a relationship, and therefore there is no question of this being an intermediary service. In fact, what Naresh bhai also highlighted is ABC might not even know the end person who is going to supply this service. So therefore, there is clearly no question of any intermediary service. Rajiv sir, if you have some additions or different thoughts on this.
Absolutely, I agree, because there is no second supply happening in the transaction which has started. It is a big, there is no resulting second supply coming out on that part of it, and absence of three parties, that is also there. But we, in the old service tax regime, there was a contrary decision of Delhi tribunal on this, and the matter is pending at a higher forum, absolutely on a similar case. But
And
of
there
course,
are
that
couple
was,
of
there are
advance ruling also on this count,
which are
against.
contrary, on this. So department's understanding is different, and of course the tribunal is also against it as of now, and the matter is pending at a higher forum. But that was of course in the service tax regime.
Correct. So should I move on to the fourth case, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So fourth case, there is one company, Mirchi One LLP. They have entered into a contract with YouTube USA, and ultimately the contract is to provide for the content. The content will be in the form of movies, an animation video, or a music video, which will be ultimately uploaded on the YouTube channel, and this will be used for streaming those videos. And once the content is put on a YouTube channel, there will be advertisements also which will be given by YouTube on those channels, and a portion of the advertisement revenue which YouTube is getting, that is being shared with Mirchi One Limited. So there is no fees or a direct amount which they get for a content. It is in the form of the sharing of the advertisement revenue which YouTube is going to get on the videos which are developed by Mirchi One, and they are going to upload it on YouTube channel. Now simultaneously, Mirchi engages or gets gives contract to various other content owners who give the raw content to Mirchi, and then Mirchi does certain value addition to those content. Of course, the primary or the raw content is owned by the content owners. They retain the copyrights on those, the original content, and thereafter certain modifications are being made by Mirchi and given this to be telecasted or streamed on the YouTube channel. So again, the challenge here is the advertisement revenue what Mirchi One is getting from YouTube USA, whether that will be subjected to GST. And the primary contention is whether this is going to be an intermediary service or not. Yes. Nilesh bhai, you can start, sir. Harish bhai?
Yeah, Keval, my first point is Mirchi 1 is supplying contents, movies, animation, video, music video, etc. What is that transaction? Whether transaction of goods or service?
Okay. So
That is first.
correct.
That is we have to answer first.
See, content would always belong to Mirchi 1 only.
I agree.
So
It
content
given a
never
right.
gets transferred. Yeah, it's purely you can say streaming rights which are given to YouTube.
Correct.
Service.
Can you compare with software right which been given? Software which right we get. Can you compare this transaction?
Harish bhai, whether it is goods or service, as regarding the intermediary is concerned, whether it is intermediary or how it makes a difference. You assume it either goods or service in both the case.
If I presume, Rajesh, sorry, if I presume the goods, then if it is a one-time transaction, if I'm not making any alteration, changes or anything, once I given content to YouTube, that is final. Then I should get my revenue. And my revenue is a variable revenue on the basis of advertisement revenue get by YouTube. Whether it will alter transactions and I am selling the content movie as a goods and I'm getting price. Can I say it is a good transaction? Then question come with is export of goods or what? I'm morely comparing with export of software, because software also we are giving a right. We are able to copyright everything, and so many decision has held that software, ready-made software is goods, and thereafter all this export of goods will come question. So whether if the good group feels there is some strength in this argument, we can discuss on the same.
Fine. Harish bhai, let me tell you for your understanding in this case, the content which is there with Mirchi, it is only uploading on the channels for the viewership. It will never transfer the right to YouTube. Obviously, it will, or if it is for limited, so right to use, you can say maybe for 1 year, 10 year, whatever. The ownership will never get transferred.
Never get transferred.
That is obviously we know. And that's why it is the transaction of a service to great extent. It cannot be supply of goods in
Raju bhai, how? Sorry.
Harish bhai, sorry. What I'm trying to say, you assume this is a service for this transaction because we are on the intermediary issues. And about goods and services, we can have a separate debate if you can, because we are running short of time to that extent.
Okay.
My apology. I would have
no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
The subject of the day. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Is it OIDR services because we are using online contents?
So OIDR services from Mirchi 1 to YouTube?
Yes, because all the services these services are like contents are provided in a online information data form. So shouldn't it be OIDR services?
OIDR should be other way. In fact, YouTube should be providing OIDR.
Yes.
That is how OIDR would come in.
Because Mirchi will upload on the portal of YouTube. That's all.
Correct.
And the viewers will be watching at the portal of YouTube. That is all.
Okay.
Vishal bhai wants to add, sir.
Keval, can we, put it this way, that Mirchi 1 and YouTube, they are, jointly, they have come forward to provide some service whereby Mirchi 1 will give his contribution by way of the content. YouTube will give his contribution by way of providing the platform for beaming that content. They jointly receive some revenue by way of advertisement, which they share. So as such, there is no provision of service. See, when the two persons when the two persons come together to contribute something, from which they earn revenue, you cannot say they are providing services to each other. So I think, is that plausible issue, or plausible opinion?
See, there is
Yes, Rajiv.
I'm sorry, Keval. You carry on.
Rajiv bhai, please.
Because if you read the question now, they have entered into contract and there is a specific role and responsibility being given. There is no jointly they are doing this. There is a contract. Mirchi1 is supposed to do this, and YouTube in turn will be doing XYZ, and the revenue they will share. So
maybe Rajiv, see, you know, that defining a responsibility, and maybe that is a secondary part, you know, but you know, primarily, you know, these both have they just intend to, you know, they come together and you provide some joint service, you know, whereby, you know, one is providing his content and other one is providing his platform.
I personally would like to say that it is a scope of or the role was determined by YouTube to Mirchi1 that you need to give me XYZ and upload on my portal, and whatever viewership revenue of advertisement I get it, that will share. That is we have debated and discussed about the compensation is not a criteria to decide the character or nature of transaction.
Definitely,
so 60/40 is only a machinery to compute the service, your remuneration.
Definitely.
But otherwise, what is the role? So they are not jointly responsible or anything. Mirchi's responsibility is over the moment is upload, and thereafter it is YouTube's responsibility. Whatever is there, that is viewing, etc., etc. That is also there. At what price he will be charging advertisement, etc. That is not to be decided by Mirchi, no, in the example. And lastly, my request here is to debate only on the issue, because what is the issue we are discussing? The income of Mirchi and whether it is an intermediary or not. That is what we are discussing, I believe.
Yes, sir. Deepali madam.
Yeah, Keval, the contract is between Mirchi1 and YouTube. I have asked questions on the chat box that what is the contract between the content owner and Mirchi1? Like, is Mirchi1 connecting the content owner to YouTube, because that will be the deciding factor. Otherwise, only two parties are there here, Mirchi1 and YouTube USA. Then there is no question of intermediary. But in the question, nothing is highlighted between the contract between the content owner and Mirchi1.
So there is an independent contract. If you look at the question, what we are trying to say, Mirchi1 has an independent contract with YouTube, and the raw content owners will give their raw content, and which they will be separately paid for it, irrespective of what revenue accrues to Mirchi. So that
yeah, so then here only two parties are involved.
Correct.
And so then there is no question of Mirchi1 being intermediate.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Anybody with a different view, or Ashish, you want to highlight something? Rajiv bhai, should we move forward? I am also of the view that this is purely, there are no three parties involved in the entire transaction. It's purely a P2B transaction where there is a consideration which is linked to some of the revenue which might be generated with by YouTube, and this has nothing to do with the intermediary service, and this would qualify as export of service.
Apart from that, no, the facilitating and supply of goods and services are concerned here. The normal intermediary will not modify your supply of goods service. Here he is getting a raw content, and thereafter he is making value addition. It's not the same product or service are getting supplied. So that is also one ground we can take, that intermediary cannot alter the second supply.
Correct. We move on to the fifth issue. Again, this is something which most of us are aware about this issue. So this is basically trading in cargo space. So there is this Rohan Container Lines who is basically buying container space or the space on the vessel, and ultimately on a margin, depending on the supply, depending on the demand and supply condition, it's ultimately sold to an exporter. Here we are typically talking about the trading margin which has been earned by this particular person in between, whether that will constitute an intermediary service or not. There has been a history to this even under the erstwhile service tax law, that whether the margin which has been earned on sale of space, that will be liable for service tax or not. So on that count, I was just wanting to give you a brief that there are a couple of decisions which have already come under the erstwhile service tax era, saying that this entire transaction is on a principal to principal basis, and therefore there is no question of it being a intermediary service. And there has been a circular also under the service tax era, which has highlighted this aspect that you will have to look at the nature of transaction. If your nature of transaction is such that you have if you have an arrangement with a shipping line, and ultimately the space is sold by the shipping line to the customer and you get a commission, then it's a transaction of an intermediary. But if you have a transaction where you have bought the space and the risk and reward of selling that space belongs to you, then in that scenario it's a principal to principal transaction and there is no question of it being an intermediary service. So just a brief background on what that circular says. And therefore, in my view, this particular transaction, here the question is very specific, that you have booked the space, the risk and reward belongs to you, and depending on the demand and supply, you ultimately sell the space. And that is where I feel this will not be constituting an intermediary supply. If somebody has any other view on this, we can discuss on that. Haresh bhai, you want to add, sir? Rajiv sir, any other thoughts on this?
Only
Ashish,
thing is,
Ashish wants to add something. Ashish Shah.
Ashish bhai, you want to say something?
kindly unmute him, Emang.
Rajiv bhai, you can. Rajiv, you can.
I would just draw your attention here that the education guide, the para 5.9.6, when it was CBIC came out with that, they have given in examples, they have explained what is intermediary, and thereafter they stated in accordance with the guiding principles which has been explained. I will not read the all. It is stated in the education guide that services provided by following person will qualify as an intermediary, and there they have listed travel agent, tour operator. There are others also, commission agent, recovery agent. Now, just take an example of a tour operator. In view of this education, of course, it has no sanctity to the extent, but it has been published by CBIC to that extent. The Lingam, we are not here to discuss the legal binding, but it is coming from the CBIC. Now, tour operator normally what it does, he will give you a total solution for your tour, which include maybe lodging, boarding, traveling, sightseeing, etc., etc., and you will get some one package price for it. Now, if that is being treated as an intermediary, and even the travel agent, now travel agent, what I understand, will only book a ticket for you, something of that kind, by any mode of travel. That's the difference between. Now here, in this example of Rohan is concerned, it is known to the exporter that Rohan is not a shipping line. They doesn't have the vessel, and they are the shipping line, maybe APL or any other shipping line will be there. Then I also mentioned in the question that the bill of lading, will be always issued by the shipping line. Now, in the definition of intermediary, the words have been used specifically is a facilitating the supply. If you look, say, intermediary is a person who facilitates and arranges the supply. Now, how to give meaning to this word facilitating and arranging? Because this Rohan is concerned, he is definitely not a shipping lines, that is known to the customer also. Of course, the only thing the price is concerned mechanism, because he has a bulk booking. That way we have a bulk booking in the flight also by the agents. Okay, that also do happens. And by tour operator also it does happen in a bulk booking. They also do bulk booking of hotels as the case may be. But still the CBIC education guide says that they are the intermediary. There is a possibility that sometimes tour operator do incur losses also, possibly. Now, in this example also, we have stated the prices are concerned, they negotiate based on supply demand, and in rarest case, there is a possibility of loss also. The computation of service charges may be negative in some occasion. Now, on that ground, can we say that it is intermediary? Because it is known to both the parties, only the amount is not known. Three parties are definitely involved. There is a facilitation. There is a shipping line, there is an exporter, and there is a Rohan who is connecting these two. Only thing, invoicing mechanism and price mechanism is concerned is not known to the parties, etc. because of the advance. It's a typical transaction. And secondly, in this example, we also stated that in the other case, there is a multimodal transport operator whereby the Rohan also get an opportunity to issuing the bill of lading. So in that case, whether answer will be different. I think Keval, my idea was to put the question in this fashion here.
Sir, I would personally feel that in either of these scenario, moment you are not able to establish that agency relationship, then you should not be falling under the intermediary principle.
So then
Basic,
going by that, then tour operator cannot be intermediary by all means.
correct. If you are not able to establish the agency principle,
That is,
then yeah,
I think Keval in any stretch, by any stretch of imagination, tour operator cannot be my agent,
cannot,
sir. By any.
cannot,
And
cannot.
the government themselves has given this example in the, of course, I do respect that education guide has no sanctity of law is different thing. But we rely upon education guide for various purposes. And that's why. So here tour operator, how can then that be even the recovery agent? How can he be a intermediary? The example cited by, so that means there is no clarity on the part of government also to understand the terminology of intermediary, because this facilitation and etc. the definition by and large has remained the same.
Correct. Yeah, I got your point, Rajiv bhai. Yes, Nilesh bhai, you want to
Here,
highlight?
I wanted to mention one thing. Sorry, I just wanted to mention one thing for the tour operator services. There are two ways in which you can do the business as a tour operator. You can do principal to principal, and you can do as an intermediary. So you can do both ways. So saying this that tour operator services are only intermediary is not correct, I guess.
I think the distinction has to be drawn from the fact that who is carrying the risk and reward. The moment I buy something and I take a responsibility of selling it, if I fail to sell, I lose. If I sell at a price and I make profit, then I make gains. So then I am no more a intermediary, because the moment I bought the space from that what you call ship owner or line owner, then the job of the line owner is over. He may be required to issue a document to the party. That's a different case.
Correct.
That's a different case.
No, on the old regime, that Greenwich matter is gone against in tribunal.
Against, correct.
No. See, sometimes few judgments you can have where you may not agree with the pronouncement of the.
I respect what you say, but I am just drawing attention. So just this is judiciary's understanding as well as the government's understanding.
Rajiv bhai, just to add what Nilesh bhai said, even if you take an example of a distributor of any company where he is buying goods and selling goods, so the goods everybody knows belongs to that principal manufacturer. Let's say Bisleri. Everybody knows it's the product which belongs or manufactured by Bisleri. But now the risk as rewards have now been shifted once a distributor buys it. So that is where.
Keval, here one thing is concerned, that is tangible item goods. Here what has happened, suppose you are shipping line, I have booked the space. When my customer comes, no sir, you will only issue bill of lading. Correct. See, you are, because custody of goods, see, you are providing the transportation of goods by vessel, and that is known to my customer also. Only thing, how much you have charged me and how much I have charged him, that remains secret, and that is a secret of our, that is where, because it's our margin. Otherwise, there are two transactions happening and there are three parties, and that's why.
And Rajiv bhai, but in this case also, the ship liner will issue at my instruction.
Yes.
No, sir.
At my instruction, I say, please issue to A. Then he issues in the name of A.
Hey, my lord, sir, you have to understand, if you give cargo, no, you have to complete the customs formality and you have to give the document. You cannot decide. It is whosoever's goods are there, no? You have to.
Very true. But it means,
your instruction,
because
I understand. Your understanding,
my,
I agree. Because you have booked the space, I know. And this person is your customer is also, I know, sir. But by issue, that means he is carrying your goods. That is what I was trying to draw attention. In the Bisleri example, no, the parlay has nothing to do once he has sold the goods.
Correct.
Very true.
Here, that's why there are two below that it is written whether answer will be different if it is a multi-mode operator.
Because Suppose if it goes empty also, it does not issue. Still,
Yeah, yeah.
he has told to me. So I
Yeah.
think I still stick to my view.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I respect. Just that I was drawing attention whether it will, to what extent it will make a difference.
No, because customs formality may require me to do something. That cannot change the nature of transaction that has occurred between the parties. No, it's a procedure prescribed under the customs that you have to, the only ship liner has to issue, and it has to issue to the party to whom the goods belong.
Yes.
Yes. So, sir, should we move on to the next issue,
Yes.
sir?
I think, Atul bhai, can we extend by about 5-7 minutes? There's a last case study.
Yes. Please.
So, last case study is typically e-commerce transaction. If you look at the Amazon model, which generally works, the only difference here is there is one Amazon, you can say Flipware, who is in Australia, and there is one Sunshine Limited who is in India. He wants to send these goods to Australia, where typically what happens is the goods are moved to Australia. There is no customer which is there today, and the goods are stored by Flipware Australia. They have a common warehouse, and on the common warehouse the goods are kept. So the transaction or the modus operandi is something like this. There is an invoice which Sunshine Limited raises. It's not a commercial invoice. It's typically an invoice which is actually meant for movement or self-use or self-warehousing basis, and on the basis of which the goods are exported to Australia. The goods are stored there, and whenever there is a customer inquiry or a customer order, Flipware does the packaging and he ships the goods to customer in Australia. Now here typically if you see, supposedly a product worth 100 rupees is sold, there is an arrangement between Flipware and Sunshine Limited that we have specific charges attributed to the ones which we have written on the right side of it. So one charge is they generally charge called as a listing fee. Just to list your product on the website, they charge you some fee. Then the goods have been warehoused at the common warehouse which Flipware has in Australia. For that, they charge the warehousing charges depending on the period that you have kept. Then there is a packing charges for packing those goods in a specific way. Like you might have seen in Amazon also, there is a specific packing when you get those goods, how it is done, and the shipment which they do. They also coordinate the customer handling and collection of payment and all of these activities, but they don't charge separately for it. There is a commission based percentage which they recover ultimately. So after deducting all of these prices, the balance amount is remitted back to Sunshine Limited. So here the question is, the payment what they are going to make to Flipware Limited, which is actually the net effect of the sale minus the recoveries that they are going to get, whether that will get categorized as an intermediary service, and whether that will be required, or rather, because if it is an intermediary service, there will be no reverse charge. If there is any other service other than intermediary, then reverse charge would come in. So we'll have to discuss it two ways: whether we will look at a listing fee, a warehousing charges, a packing charges, all of these separately, or whether we will look at this as a composite supply and consider the principal supply, what will be the principal supply, and basis that we will determine the taxability. So if we can quickly have a couple of views in next 2 minutes, and then we'll try to summarize on this. Yes, sir. Anyone on this? There is only one aspect which I typically wanted to highlight in this case study is there is a definition of e-commerce and an e-commerce operator under the GST law. So if you look at this definition, electronic commerce operator means any person who owns, operates or manages digital or electronic platform for electronic commerce. So electronic commerce means supply of goods or services or both, including digital products over digital or electronic network. So are we trying to say that e-commerce is a separate service as compared to an intermediary service? or can we say intermediary service is probably a wider term than an e-commerce service? If we are able to say that this will be an intermediary service, then the provisions of reverse charge will not apply. Otherwise, there is a possibility of reverse charge being made applicable. Any thoughts on this? Rajiv bhai, should I give my views on this?
Yeah, I think it is better now. We are almost 10 past
Yeah,
7.
Here, sir, I feel that though it may be classified as an e-commerce operator, but if you look at the definition of intermediary service, and typically if you look at a contract with these e-commerce operator, somewhere they treat themselves as an agent, and they do not take the responsibility of the goods. They always say that these goods are held on your account, and therefore it would also fall as an intermediary service. And the only challenge which may come here is the different names of the amounts which are recovered. Typically, when we look at warehousing charges, when we look at packing charges, whether this would constitute a composite supply or not. If it constitutes an composite supply, ultimately intermediary service is going to be our dominant or principal supply, and basis which there shouldn't be a reverse charge applicability. Even if this does not constitute a composite supply, you will also look at the provisions of section 13, which says services in relation to goods, where they are physically required to be made available, and then only the services can be provided. Then it goes performance based services, and again the possibility of reverse charge would not arise in this particular case, because packing or warehousing, all of these would necessarily require the goods being there, and therefore the taxability should not arise. Rajesh sir, your thoughts on this, or any inputs on?
Now, in this, the facts which you have given, 2-3 important point. What I think that first is charging listing fees. That is one part of whether your goods are sold, not sold. That's not very relevant. Listing fees upfront being charged. Secondly, there is a common warehouse being allotted, and for that amount is being charged. For everything, there is a separate character or transaction is happening. I mean to say, there may be, suppose you have 10 products, the listing fee for all the 10 products are being given or paid, that perhaps, and you may not sell 6 out of that, or means whatever, transaction may not happen of all 10. That is one. Secondly, he is giving facility of warehousing and storing. That means the ownership never gets transferred to that Australian company. It remains with you. So there is a separate service he is giving to that extent, At the end of the day, you are saying the character is turning out to be an agent. I personally feel Sunshine want his goods to be sold abroad, but apart from the marketing or booking order procure, he is taking support of this for various purposes, including packing and then inquiries, complaint, lot of things. It is more than the this thing, facilitating and all. I personally feel there is a challenge whether it will be intermediary to great extent. I have my own doubt. And secondly, one more thing, can't we think that way that when the goods are lying in the warehouse of Australia, it is in the ownership of Sunshine. So its POV also goes there. A place of a P of Sunshine will go there. Then in that, to that extent, it is transaction between both local there only, because each place. So there also so applicability of reverse charge in any case, in my view, is doubtful to that extent. Intermediary, let me tell you honestly, I don't support the view that it will be intermediary to that extent, looking at the wordings of the agreement and the terms condition which you have put in the question.
Thank you so much for your inputs. So typically what Rajiv bhai is trying to highlight is there is a possibility of there being a fixed establishment being constituted. And on the basis of that, ultimately this transaction will go out of the taxing purview here itself.
Right.
I think Atul bhai, we are done for the issues. And if there are questions which are left over, we can take, or we may conclude the session. Thank you so much once again.